Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for this forum featuring the Democratic candidates for Assembly District 48. I'm Chris Murphy, Audience Director of the Cap Times. In just a moment, I'll be turning this over to our moderator, Andrew Bahl, but I want to take a moment to thank all of you who are watching live or perhaps watching a recording of this later. If you're looking for further information about this race or others in Wisconsin between now and the elections, be sure to visit captimes.com and click on the Elections 2024 logo. Another great way to keep up on what's happening politically in Wisconsin is to subscribe to our free politics newsletter, Wedge Issues, which Andrew and his colleague Aaron McGroarty write each Friday. It's got short recaps of our coverage of the past week, plus links to lots of great coverage elsewhere. Just visit captimes.com/newsletters to sign up. We've got a lot to cover with the candidates tonight, so without further delay, I'm going to turn the forum over to Andrew, who covers state government for us here at the Cap Times. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Chris. And welcome to the Cap Times Candidate Forum for the 48th Assembly District. As Chris said, as promised, I'm Andrew Bahl. I'm a state government reporter with the Cap Times, and I'll be your moderator tonight. This is the sixth and final forum that the Cap Times will be hosting for each of the contested primary races in Dane County for State Assembly and State Senate. And many of these districts changed under new maps that were enacted earlier this year. So we want all of you all to have the information you need before heading to the polls on August 13th. Obviously, we're here live on Zoom, but we'll be posting a recording of this in the next day or so. So if you want to go back and rewatch parts of it or share with a friend, you certainly will be able to do so. We are joined tonight by all five candidates in the Democratic primary for the 48th Assembly District: Bill Connors, Andrew Hysell, Goodwill Obieze, Avery, Renk, and Rick Rose. The 48th District includes parts of East Madison, all of Sun Prairie, and parts of Dodge County. And voters will head to the polls on August 13th, and you can get more information on everything you need to do that at captimes.com. The winner of the Democratic primary will face Lisa Dempsey Rubric in the general election. Each of our candidates will get 2 minutes for their opening and closing statements, and in between, I will ask them a variety of questions about issues important to our readers. And they really are important to our readers because these are all things that we heard about, myself and my colleague Aaron McGroarty, when we did listening sessions across Dane County and an online survey to gauge what folks wanted for their election coverage in 2024. Because we do have five candidates tonight, not every candidate will be asked every question, but each candidate has 3 opportunities to raise their hand virtually and weigh in for 1 minute on a question they were not asked. We randomly determined the order of the opening statements before the forum, and Rick Rose was the lucky winner. Mr. Rose, you have Supervisor Rose, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement, starting now.
Thank you. I'll take a little bit of that time on behalf of all of us. I'm sure every one of us here tonight would like to thank you and Chris and the Cap Times for this forum and opportunity for the candidates to express themselves and interact with our residents of District 48. To me, it's a historic night. Number one, 15 minutes ago, our Democratic presidential candidate, Kamala, is on a call right now with other elected officials across the country. I chose to be here today, though, because this election is equally as important as the presidential election. This is really a time of a fight for democracy. For far too long, we have seen attacks at what we've known and come to love as American democracy. And tonight, we all five stand before you, I assure you, solidified to say we back this party and we're here to do our best to represent this. Second of all, as you mentioned, Andy, it's really unique. This is a brand new district. So this will be, for the first time, a brand new representative. To me, that means a lot because the people are speaking to how and who they want to represent their community. We will learn a lot about the vote because I know every one of my colleagues here tonight is out there interacting and talking to people to do what's right for our community. As for me, I think what I stand out a little bit differently here is I'm a current elected official. As you referenced earlier, I'm a Dane County supervisor. I'm pleased to have done that work for 3 years. Over that time, I've really focused on giving people not at the table or people's voices we've taken away a chance to literally be present at the table that is making determinations and decisions about their lives. We'll talk about that a little later. That is passionate. That is true passion for me to do that work. I'm an Uber driver. I've recently retired from the field of television. I deliver lasagnas for a program called Lasagna Love. I'm a CASA volunteer for the court system for a young boy in the foster system. I'm a Sunday school teacher. I engage with the Heartland community. And for me, when I'm out and about, I'm really hearing those stories. Professionally, I was a storyteller. I used to work in television. And for 35 years, 21 Emmy Awards later, I have learned to really hone what a story is and be able to represent that story by giving it a voice, whether that be a TV screen or what I'm seeking to do here is on the stage of Dane County or now literally for Wisconsinites. We are a hardworking state and we have more hard work to do. So thank you for that opportunity.
And next up, we're going to go over to Mr. Hysell. You have 2 minutes starting now.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I am Andrew Hysell. I live in Sun Prairie here with my family. Originally from Milwaukee, I went to Carroll College and law school out east at Georgetown. I actually went to law school at night while I worked during the day as a congressional aide for a Democratic member of Congress, and then also for two children's advocacy groups, Save the Children and the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. Back home in Wisconsin, I worked in the state legislature, in the assembly. I worked as a staff member for a state representative. I had an opportunity to work on constituent issues, policy issues, and also even do some casework for constituents of the representative when they had specific problems and issues. Also in Wisconsin, I've been really focused on trying to help bring back some of the policies that we were known for back in the 20th century. Strong schools, laws that supported workers, affordable health care. I've worked to elect and reelect Tony Evers, Janet Protasewicz, and I've really drawn the line and done what I can to fight back against efforts to restrict these individuals from doing their job. I filed a lawsuit against Robin Voss when he threatened to impeach Janet Protasewicz for simply her stating a position on an issue. I've also worked with Senator Melissa Agard on the legalization of cannabis issue. What I want to do in this role is I want to protect our rights. I want to introduce an amendment to the state constitution to create a right to a safe and legal abortion, gay marriage, as well as contraception. And it's for these reasons that I think I've been endorsed. I'm the only candidate actually that's been endorsed by labor. I have 5 labor endorsements, including the Wisconsin Education Association Council. I really love Sun Prairie. I love Madison. I love Dane County. It would be such a tremendous opportunity to represent my home in the state legislature. Thank you.
Mr. Renk, you are up next. You have 2 minutes starting now.
Yeah. Hello. First of all, just want to say thank you one more time. Thank you to Cap Times for hosting the debate. Thank you, Mr. Andrew, for moderating the debate. Also want to thank all my opponents for being here tonight. I really look forward to sharing some really excellent dialogue with you guys tonight. For those of you just getting to know me for the first time tonight, my name is Avery Renk. I'm very, very proud to be born and raised here in District 48, the only one who can say that. I grew up here in Sun Prairie in a farming family where I learned countless lessons, but most importantly, I learned the value of hard work. I went to Sun Prairie High School, then I went on to get a bachelor's of arts and a law degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I currently practice as an attorney in Sun Prairie. A lot of people ask me why I chose to stay in my hometown after I graduated law school, and for me, the answer was really easy. It's the people. I'm very, very fortunate to have met many people across the world, and I can tell you that the people of District 48 truly are first class. I've known my entire life that I wanted to serve this community. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to serve the community. So why do I choose the state assembly? Well, put it simply, I'm a bit of a nerd for state policy. The federal government, while supreme, is constitutionally limited in their powers. Local government, which affects our day-to-day lives the most, derive their power from the state. A strong state government is therefore crucial for a strong community. I'm particularly passionate about making sure that the government is providing an education, affordable health care, protecting women's rights, and leading that fight against climate change. I cannot wait to talk about the issues that matter to District 48 tonight, and I once again want to thank you for having me.
Mr. Obieze, you are next up. You have 2 minutes starting now.
Well, thank you so much, Cap Time. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Andrew, for moderating this forum. So my name is Goodwill like the store, Goodwill Obieze. So where did where did the name come from? So I am originally Nigerian, from Nigeria, in West Africa, and although I wasn't born in the district, but I came in as a teenager. Lived in Madison for almost half of my life, and I'm happy to say I'm one of the youngest in this year's election. And I am a graduate of Madison East High School. Went on to Madison College, and then went on to UW Oshkosh to get my bachelor's degree in human resources, and then decided to come back to Madison, and then worked for the UW Health, and then also worked for the state of Wisconsin, and then went on to get my master's in business administration, MBA, also human resources, and currently I work for a mental health organization here in the community. And like Rick said, I am also an Uber driver here in the community. I've been a DoorDash driver. I've driven for East Streets and many others, right, in the hearts of pandemic with my pregnant wife at the time. And the reason I share all this is I'm just an ordinary person, just like any of us here in the community, and I want the best for our community. I believe in affordable housing. I believe in affordable healthcare. I believe in affordable childcare. I have a 3-year-old, so I want to make sure that we have we have someone that actually represents us at the state capitol, and then I will be that person. I know how to fight, and when we fight, we win. Like Kamala Harris said when I hung out with her last week in Milwaukee. Thank you.
And last but not least, Mr. Connors, you have 2 minutes starting now.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Hi, I'm Bill Connors. I'm running for State Assembly to fight for the freedom of the residents of Assembly District 48. I share your vision for our community and state and will work relentlessly to make it happen. I was born and raised in Madison and attended La Follette High School. I'm a lifelong Badgers fan and proudly received a bachelor's degree, law degree, and master's degree in public policy and administration from the UW-Madison. Over 15 years ago, our family moved to Sun Prairie. Friends and neighbors encouraged me to run for the city council. I ran and won and was reelected twice. My peers on the city council twice elected me council president. While I was on the city council, we expanded Sun Prairie's anti-discrimination ordinances to protect transgender people and won first-time city funding for community schools. Sun Prairie Alders Steve Stocker, Maureen Crombie, Mike Jacobs, Santiago Rosas, and Bob Yokish have endorsed me because they have seen me get things done while I was an alder. My wife Joan and I have 4 children who graduated from Sun Prairie High School. I volunteered on 3 citizen committees advising the school board. Sun Prairie School Board President Diana McFarland and School Board member Steve Schrader have endorsed me because they have seen my passionate support of public schools in action. I will focus on these priorities as your assembly representative. Make all housing more affordable. Increase state funding for our public schools, tech colleges, and public universities. Defend reproductive rights and access to reproductive health care. And protect our environment. I have a proven progressive track record of getting things done. Thank you for watching this candidate forum.
Well, thank you to all of our candidates. And we're going to dive right into some of the policy questions because a lot of important issues out there. And our first question is to Supervisor Rose, and it's probably the issue that we heard the most about from our readers. And that is, should the legislature set any limits on abortion access beyond the restrictions currently in state law?
You know, I had referenced that in the introduction, and I think what's so wonderful, again, as all of us have referred to, is the sense that all 5 of us really stand on the same page on the major issues. I just want to reiterate how important that is. And I think this is an issue that you can't really argue. In my entire lifetime, I was born in 65. So since I was 5 some years old, I've lived in knowing that women had protection over their bodies. That day it happened, harken back to earlier days for me as a queer man, like having a love of my life, but knowing I couldn't marry him. I was told I couldn't marry him. And that was as recent as the early 2000s. These are not issues we should mess with. So I stand firmly that, I would argue that we don't have a law that really prevents it. It's all in the courts. It's being interpreted. This is all being played out on a very highly political level about people's very personal lives.
And Mr. Hysell has his hand raised, so we're going to go over to him for a minute to weigh in.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. I really feel strongly about this issue. I would say it's my number one issue, which is we cannot sit by and just let these things happen. We need to take proactive action to protect our rights. We need to protect a woman's right to choose a safe legal abortion. We need to protect gay marriage, which is actually outlawed in the Wisconsin Constitution. So I'm proposing an amendment that we work to begin to push forward. It may not pass right away, but we can use it kind of like with the fair maps as a campaign to like galvanize support, to put people on the record either for or against it, and to take proactive action so that we're not in a position where more and more of these rights are taken away from individuals in our state.
Mr. Obieze also has his hand raised, and you have a minute as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I have three chances, but I was like, okay, women's right is really important to me and to my family. I remember when my wife was going through pregnancy when she was pregnant for a 3-year-old. Right now, that changed my perspective about women's right. And I believe that women should have the autonomy to their body. And I live this every day in my family. And if you see my wife around in the district, ask her. I tell her, let me know when she's ready for us to have another child. If she's not ready, it's fine as well. We can have one, and I respect that. And I saw the pain during the pregnancy. I witnessed everything, and that changed my perspective. And in terms of us choosing who to love, I believe that we should be given that right. And I can't imagine someone telling me to not love my wife. That would not be fair at all. So therefore, I believe that everyone deserves the right to choose who they love, who they want to be with, who they want to associate with. And that is my view when it comes to equality, fairness, and justice. Thank you.
And we are going to go to the next question to Mr. Hysell. What do you see as the biggest economic issue facing Dane County, and what should the legislature do about it?
I think there's a number of big issues: affordable housing, affordable quality childcare, but I'll focus on education. There is an education funding crisis in this state, and it's not an accident. It's been an effort over a number of decades to push the cost of our schools from the state to localities. It's why we're having this record number of these referenda across the state that's putting this onerous burden on the local taxpayer. And it needs to stop, because there is a constitutional right in Wisconsin to an education. The state has a responsibility to provide adequate and equitable education for all students. It's the backbone of our communities. It's what our state's success, our economic success, has been built upon. And I therefore see this as something that we need to really resolve quickly. I would increase the reimbursement for special education. I would free up the surplus so that it could be used to fund schools. I would prioritize the fact that the state has a responsibility to do this, and to shift that back to the state, and the cap that's been in place since 2009, that's arbitrary, needs to be lifted. I think at the end of the day, we can also say too that while we can't afford to fund our public schools because we don't have enough state funding, we don't need to be sending money to unaccountable private schools through vouchers.
My questions are too good. Everyone wants to weigh in on them. We're going to start with Mr. Connors. You have a minute to weigh in.
Great, thank you. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly that one of the major issues is the deplorable state of lack of state funding for our public schools, which has been going on for quite some time, and the very unfortunate diversion of needed resources from our public schools to private schools through the voucher program. I would work tirelessly to rein in and if possible, abolish the voucher program. Also, the revenue cap issue that restrains not just state funding, but also local funding unless you pass a referendum. And some communities, such as Sun Prairie, have been very willing to pass referenda. But in many communities throughout the state, that's not even an option. And so we have a tremendous disparity in educational opportunity depending on whether you live in a district that's willing to pass referendum or not. And that needs to stop.
Mr. Renk, we're going to go over to you for a minute as well. We can't hear you, and you're unmuted, so.
Is that better?
Yes, nailed it.
So sorry about that. I accidentally turned my microphone off. So, I completely agree with my candidates or with the other candidates that we need to revamp the education system. Fighting tirelessly to end that voucher charter system is probably, and those revenue caps, no disagreement. The question though was on what the biggest economic issue facing Wisconsin is. I think the biggest economic issue facing Wisconsin is our university system continuing to slide down a little bit. The University of Wisconsin, specifically the University of Wisconsin-Madison, has long been the heartbeat of the economy of Wisconsin. The research that comes in and the jobs that come in to live close to a world-class university. We need to increase funding to our universities. And the way we need to do this is by raising more money. We can raise more money by legalizing cannabis and using that money to reinvest into our technical schools and our university systems so that our university systems are.
And I would just check your mic again. We lost you a little bit at the end there, but just the very last sentence. And in the meantime, we're going to go over to Supervisor Rose. He also has his hand raised. You have 1 minute.
No, thank you. Yeah, so the question is about economics. I think that what's so important, whatever we talk about, whether it's attainable housing or healthcare, that there are stories around this. There's intersectionality. We're realizing that so often we just micromanage various pieces. Instead, when it comes to an economic overview, an emotional overview, we need to look at how all these things speak together. And that really is a subject of equity. We all need to be on the same page to begin with. And when I look at the surplus in our dollars, I was asked recently, would you keep that a surplus or would you use those dollars? In a dream world, what I hear from my residents is we all need to have equity. And I would take those dollars overall and really look at bringing us on to the same page so we can all deal with these issues more on an equal level.
Our next question is for you, Mr. Renk, and it is looking at the issue of the state's minimum wage. Wisconsin has not raised the minimum wage since 2009, leaving at $7.25 for hourly workers. Should the legislature vote to raise that, and if so, what dollar amount would you set it at?
Yeah, great question, Andrew. I absolutely think that we should raise the minimum wage. I think 15 has kind of been the starting point for a long time, although I'm not quite sure if that number has even kept up with inflation. I'd like to see it looking at 15 and then get it indexed to inflation right away to make sure that it keeps going up and our workers keep getting the money they deserve. Listen, the people working our low-paying jobs are not working lower-value jobs. Jobs they're working to keep our food on our table, to keep staffing our restaurants, our malls, everything we love. These customer service jobs and these other fairly low-paying jobs are crucial to our economy and crucial to our society. It's time we start acting like it. We need to show appreciation for these people that are doing very difficult and often taxing jobs for our community. The disvaluation of these jobs over the last 20 years has been incredibly disheartening for someone like me. Growing up, I learned that everyone working was an important piece in the cog of society, of our economy. We need to get back to that, treating everyone as an important piece of important cog of a larger economy. And a great way to do that is to raise the minimum wage. So thank you for that question.
Next, we're gonna, oh, I see Supervisor Rose, you have your hand up. You have 1 minute to chime in on that.
Great. I'd be remiss without talking about so many of the residents, and mostly around Sun Prairie in general, that I've come into contact with that are making $7.25 an hour are also single moms. The plight for single parents is certainly there. Being a cisgendered male, I understand that. I mean, we have our own challenges. But women in general, right now, in the context of what we're talking about here tonight, can't even make a decision about their body. Sorry if you get emotional here. They're making $7.25 an hour. They're taking an Uber because they don't qualify to own a vehicle and be proud that they can put their children in a vehicle in a safe seat because they can't even afford a safe seat for the kids. We need to really look at the core of this. This goes down to educational basis, teaching people about financial responsibility in curriculum. We grew up learning typing and cooking, but have we really grown up to understand finances, or what it looks like when you go bankrupt, or what it looks like when you're lacking thing and a government is failing you? I really speak highly to the change needs to be made. I mirror whatever Avery is saying on that as well for that reason.
Our next question will be for Mr. Obieze. And in 2023, in the most recent legislative session, Republicans proposed a bill that would restrict camping on public land and also restrict how the state distributes grant funding on addressing the issue of homelessness. And the question is this: is homelessness an issue that should be handled at a fundamentally local level, or is there a role for the state to play as well? And if so, what should that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So there's a lot of things coupling with homelessness, right? I know January 1st, New Year's Day, I spend my day actually at the homeless shelter right on the east side of Madison by Eastern Mall. And basically, I spend my time there speaking to those individuals and wanting to understand what their needs are and why they're there, basically. And a lot of them spoke to me, said that they're because it's not because they committed any crimes or they did anything wrong or they had a choice, but they can afford housing in Dane County. They can afford housing in Madison or in Sun Prairie. So, and these are individuals that go to work just like I do Monday to Friday, 40 hours a week, but they can afford rent, whereby landlords require you to make 2-3 times the amount of your monthly rent. That is not feasible. That is not affordable at all. So I believe that homelessness should be a concern to the whole state as well as to local as well. We should be able to put more funding and more focus in making sure that we have affordable housing, we have affordable healthcare. Mental health is also very important in our state, and to make sure that we make sure that Governor Evers have a mental health emergency in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you.
Supervisor Rose is raising his hand, and just a note for you, that is the third and final time you can do that, but you have 1 minute to chime in as well.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, all these issues will rile something up in all of this, but I wouldn't be myself if I wasn't commenting and giving my heartfelt feelings about this. What I'm hearing in this question is definitely what my predecessor shared. Goodwill, I appreciate that. This needs to be a concern of the people. Doesn't matter what body of government is making these decisions. We are here to represent the people, whether we're the president or whether we're an alderperson. We're all here for that reason. And that is the issue here, is better government. And our state, which is being looked like under a microscope right now for the presidential part, I don't think people even within our state realize that unless you're a Democrat, unless you're a Republican, you can't even bring a piece of legislation forward under the tyranny of a leader that has been in far too long. I appreciate the work that Andrew's done on this. That's a problem. That does not lead to better government. Number two, I think the point here is state and local. So often the state will pass laws that fall on the onus of local communities to take care of them. I know this all too well as Dane County Board Supervisor. We have to look first, number one, constitutionally at what the state allows us to do or not. But we don't ever have to look at when the state tells us and mandates us to do something like Marcy law, a very good law that requires victim witness protection for anybody in a situation. However, they don't fund it.
Supervisor, I'm going to cut you off. Your
Thank you.
time is up.
Thank you.
We want to make sure we can get to everything.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And we're going to go next to Mr. Connors. And this is another issue we've heard a lot from our readers about, but obviously the Wisconsin legislature has not legalized marijuana in any form. Should we legalize medical cannabis, recreational cannabis? And, you know, if you answer yes to that, what should legislators really be prioritizing when they're considering this issue?
I believe we should fully legalize cannabis in Wisconsin. We need to stop criminalizing a behavior that ends up disproportionately incarcerating people of color. We need to stop that. We should regulate it. We should tax it. Right now, the state of Wisconsin is losing a great deal of revenue because so many of our residents are going to our neighboring states to purchase cannabis, and they're getting the tax revenue and not us. So I would support full legalization. I just want to also take a little bit of my time here to go back and talk about one of the other issues, and that was the economic issues. In Dane County, housing cost is a major economic issue. And if we do not take action, state and local governments working cooperatively to increase the supply and take costs out of housing so that we have more housing at a more reasonable price, we are going to harm ourselves economically. People right now are moving here for economic opportunities. And if we become like San Francisco or New York City, they're going to stop moving here because they can't afford the housing.
Mr. Hysell, you have your hand up. A minute for you to chime in as well.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, this issue is very important to me. I worked with Senator Melissa Agard on this issue for a number of years. The referendas that were on the ballot back in 2018, I worked with an organization to get those there. There needs to be decriminalization and expungement of records as well as legalization. We cannot forget about the people that have been harmed by prohibition. They need to be, those things need to be addressed. And those populations that have been most harmed by prohibition, which are communities of color and lower socioeconomic populations, need to have special access to any new market so that they can benefit from legalization. So full legalization is important. It is in line with what our neighbors are doing. We can actually see how to do it correctly because we've seen how they've done it already. We can learn from their mistakes and also lean into their successes. The state of Michigan sends to schools about $40 million a year just from tax revenue from legalized cannabis. It's a real opportunity that this state is passing up and that the overwhelming majority of all people, Democrats, Republicans, and independents want. It is time to legalize cannabis, and we need to do it next year.
We're going to go back to Supervisor Rose for this next question. And we were talking earlier about maps and the new 48th district. We're going to go back to maps now. And the question is, should the Wisconsin legislature implement some sort of nonpartisan entity to draw district lines for the United States Congress, state legislature, or both?
Yeah, when the subject at hand is really fair representation. I don't want to be remiss that all of us are really based here in the Sun Prairie, Madison area. The part of this new district that reaches up into the Columbus area, my family are actually settled Dodge County. They came over from Bavaria. We were raised in a farm family. That was delightful to me to hear that is part of the community that we are representing here today. But when you get right down to it, when the maps made history not too long ago here in Wisconsin, there still was not agreement between Democrats, right? We had a governor that wasn't agreeing with Melissa Agard's group at the time, the Senate. And so will they ever be fair? I think that where we sit today, this gives us this opportunity, as I said earlier, to see where we go and what the community speaks and how fair it seems. But definitely, I'd advocate a nonpartisan commission to really come together and look at it based on census numbers.
Mr. Renk, you have your hand up. You will get a minute as well.
Yeah, I think we absolutely need to handle this in a nonpartisan manner. What's happened over the last 14 years in Wisconsin simply can't happen again. It's great right now that the Democrats have some control over the maps right now, but we don't know when another Republican majority is coming where they're going to go for the same thing that they went through these last times. So we need to get a nonpartisan process going right away, something that includes both Democrats and Republicans elected, as well as non-elected experts in mapping. Along with this, we need to amend our state constitution to create that board as the final authority on all mapping problems. When you have processes that go back to the maps or go back to the courts or back to the legislatures to fix disagreements, it ends up with one political party taking control of the map making process. The only way to take care of this is a nonpartisan map making process that needs to be enshrined in our Wisconsin state constitution. Thanks.
We're going to go over to Mr. Hysell for this next question, and that is short and sweet, but an important issue. What is the biggest thing the state can do to fight climate change?
The state needs to do a number of things to fight climate change. This is something that, first of all, I literally was walking down the street last night in the neighborhood, knocking on doors, and I ran into a woman and she said, the most important issue to me is climate change. And I said, why? And she said, it's my daughter. My daughter, she's 18. What is the world going to look like when she's my age, when she's 50? And she's exactly right. We just hit two of the hottest days on record in the world, and we are still arguing whether it even exists. In the state of Wisconsin, we need to prioritize clean energy. We need to expand the use of solar residentially. We need to have the utilities transition to green energy and away from coal and gas and oil and other sorts of carbon producing technologies. We need to look at things like bringing to bear the possibility of even using, they're making inroads now with nuclear energy, small modular reactors that don't generate any carbon and that can be constructed safely and used safely. But at the end of the day, we need a recognition that it exists. I mean, that there's a problem with the climate. And I think that's something that we need to find a way to reach those who don't believe in it. And we need to find ways to really prioritize it in the state with utilities and also residentially so that people have the power with their own home through solar panels to tap into green energy.
Mr. Connors, you have your hand raised. 1 minute to you to weigh in.
Thank you. I'm the father of 4 young adults, people in their early to mid 20s. And I can tell you, this is their number one issue. They are having a really hard time imagining how their lives are going to look in 10, 20, 30 years, and are having a really hard time imagining bringing their own children into this world because they are so worried about what that world is going to be. And so it is imperative that our state government work on this issue. I'll give you one example of something the state government can do. Right now, state law says that if a large institution, say like the city of Madison, wanted to lease equipment for solar, they couldn't do it because they're not a the provider's not a regulated utility. We need to change that state law so that large users can lease solar equipment and use solar electric power.
And Mr. Renk, you also have a minute to chime in as well. And as a heads up, this is also your third and final hand raising opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. This is definitely my top issue. I'm 25 years old. I'm very concerned about where the world is going and everything. Fixing that climate is my top priority. And for that reason, I kind of have to disagree with Andrew here that recognizing it is a step that we need to take. We are well past the point where we need to pass laws recognizing that climate change is real. We need to start fighting climate change and fighting climate change now. We need to take action now. Okay, I think one of the biggest things that we can do to protect our fight against climate change is starting to conserve our land a little better. Some ecosystems are particularly important for fighting climate change, for mitigating climate change. One of these ecosystems is our wetlands. I really want to make sure that our wetlands aren't getting developed over and that private owners of wetlands are incentivized to keep that wetland and to keep it conserved. I'm going to fight to do that. And listen, I'm uniquely prepared to fight against climate change because I know the existentialness, the importance of this crisis. I'm not going to let other issues that aren't as existential creep up. I'm going to make sure that climate is always my top priority. Thank you.
Well, and Mr. Renk, we're going to stay with you for this next question. Should the Wisconsin legislature enact a red flag law or a law that allows law enforcement to seek a judicial order for a person deemed to be a risk to themselves or others to surrender their firearm?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's one law that should absolutely be passed to answer your question. But this is part of a broader issue, the issue of gun safety. Listen, I believe in the Second Amendment. I do, but I don't believe in it to the point that it's being used right now. Where kids dying in schools from gun violence and at concerts is an absolute epidemic that has to be dealt with and has to be prioritized. The one thing I'm a little worried about with gun control is the new Supreme Court doctrine saying that there has to be an analog from the late 1800s for a gun law to be upheld in the court. I think this is a very antiquated and ridiculous way of thinking about gun control laws and really of thinking about any constitutional law, but it's what our Supreme Court has left us with. And at the state government, I want to make sure that none of my regulations are getting overturned by the Supreme Court. So another law, in addition to red flag laws, that I want to focus on is magazine size limits. Now, back in the 1800s, there weren't a lot of bullets in guns, so I think there's a strong precedence for this regulation to be upheld. I also think that there's no reason somebody using a gun for lawful purposes needs more than 5 or 6 rounds in their weapon. I think that 5 or 6 rounds can accomplish all lawful uses of a firearm. We have to choose kids at the end of the day. We have to choose safety. We have to stop this. This is the only place in the world this happens, and it's because we don't control guns. It's time to start doing that, and I'm going to fight for that in the state assembly. Thank you.
Next, we're going to go back to you, Mr. Obieze, for this next question. This district includes part of Madison. It's just right down the road from UW-Madison. Go Badgers. It's important to ask about higher education, I think. And is the declining state support for public higher education in Wisconsin the biggest barrier to the UW system's success? Or are there policy changes needed either in the legislature or the Board of Regents to ensure the sustainability of public higher ed?
Thank you for that question. First, I just want to draw everyone's attention to what just recently happened with the whole increase in wages for our educators, right? Which it's very absurd that that a Republican led by Voss is going to use DEI as a standing block. That is unfortunate, and so we want to make sure that DEI continue to stay in our higher education, in our schools down the road, and then also I'm someone I believe in higher education. As someone that went to college and went to Madison College here in the city, and then also went on to get my bachelor's and master's, I believe that we should be able to make college affordable. I went through my colleges because I had a good high school counselor who was able to direct me to the right scholarships. I had 3 jobs in addition when I was in college as well. So I believe that higher ed should be able to be affordable to all students. And then lastly, I heard on one of the media that the UW right now, some schools are going to high schools, and then where you would have a guarantee entry if you meet the necessary GPA or academic achievement. So, which is great. I think we're moving in the right direction, but we need to at least get Voss out of that seat for us to progress. Thank you.
And Mr. Connors, you have your hand raised. Heads up, that's also your third and final one, but take a minute as well to weigh in.
Great. So thank you, Andrew. Your question focused on UW system, and that's very important. I'm passionate about that. I'm a Badger myself. But we spend a lot of time talking about that level of post-secondary education. We don't talk enough about our technical colleges and about the important role they play. And we're facing a housing shortage. In order to help do something to close that gap in our housing between housing supply and housing demand, we need many more young people going into the skilled building trades and into union apprenticeship programs, and our technical colleges are a key step in attracting young people into the building trades and then moving them into those union apprenticeship programs. And I will strongly support funding for that if I'm elected. Thank you.
Mr. Connors, we're going to stay with you for this next question. How can the state ensure that police departments in Wisconsin and in Dane County are fair and just in how they carry out their duties and do not engage in racial profiling?
That is a great question and a really challenging question, because the state doesn't have, like direct control over these local governments and their local law enforcement. And what the state needs to do is set a standard for training at the state level, at the local level. We need training for our officers in how to de-escalate situations, and so that they do not become violent. We need a lot more diversity, inclusion training, equity and inclusion training for our officers throughout the state. That'll send Robin Voss, his head will probably explode hearing that. But that's what we need, and we need the state to mandate it and provide the financial resources to make it happen. Because this is a terrible problem that isn't being adequately addressed, and there is a role for the state, but the state is going to have to help local governments deal with it, because police officers and sheriff's deputies work for local governments, not for the state. Thank you.
And Mr. Hysell, you have a minute to weigh in as well, and that is also your third and final opportunity to do so.
Sure. So first, I just want to address really quickly. So I think Avery made a comment about, I think he misinterpreted or misheard what I said. I definitely believe climate change is real. The Clean Wisconsin Action Fund has endorsed me. The organization dedicated to clean water, air, and climate. And what I was talking about instead was the Republicans' refusal to acknowledge that climate change is a real thing. And Avery knows a fair number of Republicans, so those are the people that I'm talking about. In terms of the police and what we can do through the Judiciary Committee and the state legislature and the state assembly, we can review statutes that relate to the protections and the potential liability that police and localities can face if they do discriminate if they racially profile or discriminate against people based upon race or any other sort of prohibited classification. So there are things that we can do through policy change, through the Judiciary Committee to address this issue. There's definitely a role that the state can play.
And we have 5 more questions. I'm confident we can do that, do closing statements, and keep this to about an hour. I have faith in us all. And to that end, I'm going to Supervisor Rose for this next question. We're going to circle back to voting and the issue of the Wisconsin Elections Commission. In your mind, Supervisor, should the state make changes to the Elections Commission, or is the current system adequately serving local clerks and voters across the state?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think your comment was directed at me, and I love it. So it's okay. I'll be as brief as I can. That's something I'm currently digging into. I think what's really important to us to know is that we're in a very strange time. So we've come out of an epidemic that people don't even want to address. We as Americans are super strong and titanium built, right? We don't want to address the things that happened there. We don't want to address the last 2 elections where elections were wrong. We don't want to address things that our current president is addressing in his last few months of the powers of the Supreme Court. These are things that need to be looked at because they change daily. We have to keep up with the time. So I do think we need to take a stronger look at this. And I'm doing that right now as well.
And not to rush anyone, you all can use your full 90 seconds don't interpret that as a playing the music at the Oscars kind of thing. But we're going to go over to Mr. Hysell for that this next question, still on the issue of democracy, and that is, what do you think is the biggest thing that could be done to strengthen democracy in Wisconsin?
I think one of the biggest things that we can do is, and it's been discussed already, is to have a commission to set fair maps, take it out of the political process. I think fair maps makes a huge difference because if you have more swing districts, then what you'll have is our groups of legislators, majorities and minorities, that have to pay attention to what the other side's saying. You won't be able to run and just say, doesn't matter what I do, I can act like Lauren Boebert in the US Congress and I will get reelected. You'll have to do things that appeal to the center. And I think if we have fair maps, I think that will ensure that people work together. There's more things that unite us than divide us. And I think the gerrymandered districts is a really divisive force. Another thing we can do for democracy is to get money out of politics. The Supreme Court has really made that a challenge. I worked on campaign finance reform in the 105th Congress as a staff member, as a legislative aide, and we passed legislation. It was the House version of the McCain-Feingold bill, which was mostly eradicated by the U.S. Supreme Court. But when you allow large companies and special interests to directly influence campaigns, to buy the airwaves, to reach voters with these kinds of messages without any sort of an equal response and any sort of clarification of what's true, it undermines democracy. And we really need to have campaign finance reform in order to protect our democratic system.
Mr. Renk, this next question is for you. Are there further changes needed to the shared revenue law that was passed in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, right now my biggest concern with the shared revenue law being passed is these couple referendums that we're seeing coming up in the primary election. Some of that money in the state revenue was supposed to be going towards keeping our lakes and rivers clean. It was approved money going to the governor. That's under attack right now. I think when we want to talk about shared revenue, though, the thing that we got to talk about most is the Medicaid expansion. We've been sitting on the Medicaid expansion for over 15 years now. And it's pretty much an indefensible position that the Republicans have taken in the legislature. Robin Vos has never brought it to the floor because he can't defend it. And that's something on day one I want to send over to the Senate to make those Republicans defend that once we get this majority in the Assembly. For anyone who doesn't quite know the Medicaid system perfectly, the Medicaid expansion would unlock higher federal matching funds, which would allow Badger Care to cover people up to 200% of the poverty level. Right now, that's at 133% of the poverty level, which is absolutely insulting for people trying to make healthcare payments at that income, trying to pay full premiums. So right now, we need to unlock more shared revenue by accepting the Medicaid expansion. Thank you.
And Mr. Obieze, you have 1 minute to weigh in on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I just heard Medicaid and I was like, okay, I got to talk about this, right? And as someone that works at a mental health organization here in Dane County, I think we see the grunts, the ripple effect of not having a Medicaid expansion and Medicare as well. So I believe that we should be able to put more funding into our mental health, and we do have those fundings, we do have those excesses, and it's all about prioritization, right? So I believe that mental health is important, and to make sure that we put our money in where our mouth is as well. Thank you.
And don't go too far because the next question is for you. Should the state end its school choice programs in Milwaukee, Racine, and statewide? And if so, should the state reinvest those funds in public schools?
Thank you. And I was very fortunate to attend some of the discussion that was had here in Sun Prairie with some of the candidates. And I learned quite a lot about public school funding. And even though I am a product of public school, I believe in public school. I believe that we should have more funding towards public school. I don't believe in increasing our property taxes for that, but I believe that we should be able to prioritize it, and then making sure that we actually should focus on the needs of the community. We shouldn't have our kids go to different communities to seek for a better school. We should be able to put more money and make our community a safe and fair place for our children to go to school. So I absolutely believe that public school funding is very important to Sun Prairie and Madison and Wisconsin as a whole.
Our final question will be for you, Mr. Connors, and that is, should the state government and the universities of Wisconsin system have programs in place to enhance diversity in their hiring process and support students and faculty of color, folks with disabilities, and other possibly marginalized groups?
Yes, absolutely. We should. We should have a popular the professors, instructors, staff of our higher education institutions should reflect the population that they're serving. And I absolutely support that. And I support diversity, equity, inclusion programs in general in our higher education. I'd like to go back and talk a little bit about some of the other questions you just asked about shared revenue. You know, that most recent increase in shared revenue was not distributed fairly. City of Madison got nowhere near the amount of shared revenue that it should have received. That needs to be reworked. And I also, as I mentioned earlier, will do everything I can to try to repeal and eliminate the voucher program so that we can steer those funds into our public schools.
And Mr. Obieze, you have your hand raised as well. 1 minute for you.
All right, I figured this is my last one. I might as well use it, right? So just wanted to address a couple of things, right? And all of these issues are really important, but it all starts with us having good healthcare. It all starts with us having affordable childcare, right? And healthcare, for example, I will share some personal story here. So I had a significant other who went to ER and unconscious, and then the first thing the door knock we received was from registration, and they asked, "How are we going to pay for this?" Right? And that is very ridiculous. You have a spouse who is unconscious, and one thing they want to know is how you're going to pay for it. Right. And then we came out of that ER with almost $40,000 bill. That is ridiculous. And so I want to make sure that we are on a path to healthcare for all, for everyone in Wisconsin. And that is the last thing we want to worry about. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. And it's time now to move into closing statements. We're going to use the same order we used way back at the beginning of this. So Supervisor Rose, we're going to start with you. 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Great. I'm going to say recently I read a study about 50% of a community's population changes every 5 to 10 years. 50% every 5 to 10 years. And we are in a unique place here in the new District 48. It's rural and it's urban. I'm going to live in a place that values urban growth, but also respects the fact I can drive on a road like Felon Road and see wild turkeys and deer. And there should be no reason that doesn't happen. But it's critical now to navigate that system. 5 years is too long. I will say I have the skills, the ability, the capabilities, and the willingness as a current board supervisor here in Dane County to step in and get the job done from day one. I want to follow in the path of people that had this same seat, like Tammy Baldwin, Mark Pocan, that are advocating this on a higher level. The president himself came from a county experience and moved it all the way through his presidency. I also want to speak to the fact that we need to hear people. You know, it's not just about the politics of the people I mentioned that got them there. It wasn't about their endorsements. It was about the fact that both Tammy and Mark meet people where they're at. And that is so important to me to do. And I will say with pride, being a Dane County Board supervisor, I have passed over 250 pieces of legislation as a sponsor, co-sponsor, author. Those include novel programs like Trans Sanctuary, Indigenous Peoples Day, hanging the Ho-Chunk flag where it rightly belongs to hang on the U.S. flagpole, the Crown Act, which prevents discrimination because how someone wants to wear their hair. Those were all pieces of legislation I did because people came to me and said, we need to do it, and by working with others to do so. I will also say that, I'm endorsed by the Dane County Sheriff. That was a big endorsement for me. I've sat in public protection and justice and other committees, but safety in the community means a lot to me. Just want to wrap it up that there aren't just heroes like Sonia Biles and Stephen Netterizik. There are also heroes like the mother of a young girl named Kiki who lost her life for no reason in my current district. She spoke that she is advocating, and she will be at the table every time we talk about gun safety. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Hysell, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for this opportunity that the Cap Times has provided us. I just want to say that I think it's really exciting and incredible that we have 5 candidates in this primary. I think a lot of times people feel they don't have enough choices. And I think in this situation, we have the most number of options in the state of Wisconsin. So I think we should feel really happy about that. And I'm glad we've had this opportunity to talk with each other today. When I'm elected, I am going to fight for a woman's right to choose a safe and legal abortion. There's never been a rollback of rights by our Supreme Court ever. They've always advanced rights, and for the first time ever, they've taken them away. What's next? The right to marry who you love, the right to contraception. I will work with my colleagues to pass an amendment so that that right cannot be taken away. That's a priority. I also will be focused on legislation and policy that helps working families, public education, investing in public education, affordable childcare, affordable healthcare. What matters to me is what matters to working families, not what matters to large special interests and corporations. And I feel that the state has gone that direction for some time now, and we're starting to turn the corner. It's the reason why I'm endorsed by labor unions, 5 different labor unions, steam fitters, IBEW, the carpenters, and WEAC. These unions know that when I get in, I will fight for them and I will fight for their members, and their members are workers. I also will just say that I do feel we're making a great deal of progress in this state. We've reelected Evers twice. We have Justice Janet Protasewicz. We now have new maps. I want to keep building on that, and I want that success because we really have an opportunity right now to continue to restore the greatness that Wisconsin was, a Wisconsin that cared about the average person, and these policies that are just catering to special interests were just not the driving force. So thank you very much.
Mr. Renk, over to you for 2-minute closing statement.
Listen, folks, right now it's really easy to feel frustrated and discouraged during this difficult and oftentimes frightening period in our country's political history, in our country and our state's political history. Attacks on our democracy and on our freedom are abound, and there's so much work to be done to protect those things. But I also feel excited and hopeful. I see this election as a time to turn the page into a brand new era of politics for our state and the country. I can't wait to defeat Donald Trump and MAGA at the ballot box one final time in November. And I can't wait to see an assembly that is representative of people of Wisconsin and not representative of Robin Vos, thanks to the tireless work put in by Governor Evers and other state leaders in our Democratic Party to end the gerrymandered system. District 48 has a unique opportunity to elect a representative who's going to lead us into this next era of politics. We need a representative who reflects the community's values, a representative who is honest, a representative who listens to his constituents, and most importantly, a representative who works hard for their community. I'm going to do all of this for you as your representative. When you elect me into the state assembly, I will work tirelessly to make sure that our education system is working for everyone, is working for our teachers, is working for our kids. I'm going to make sure that Wisconsin is pushing to expand and not restrict access to healthcare. I'm going to be pushing every day so that Wisconsin becomes a world leader in fighting climate change and does not become one of the groups contributing to the problems that we're seeing across the world caused by the climate crisis. And last, I'm going to fight every day to protect your rights, whether it's right to abortion, right to IVF, right to contraceptives, right to marry who you will, or your right to have affordable and secure housing. I'm going to be fighting for that every single day. I humbly ask for your vote on August 13th to elect the next generation of political leaders into our state house. Thank you very much.
Mr. Obieze, you are next up.
Thank you. And thank you, Avery, for saying that next generation. And I think me and you are in that next generation. So thank you for saying that. So again, like my name is Goodwill Obieze. And I remember when I decided to run, I've been told, do not run. Campaigning is expensive. They don't they don't have your kind at the state capitol, right? It's not your type. I mean, and those things actually motivated me to run. And so I decided to run. And I want to make sure that I will continue to fight for minimum wage. And we talked about minimum wage, $15. $15, that was like yesterday. Inflation does not wait for Wisconsin to get to a minimum wage, right? So I believe that we should have a minimum wage that is more than $15 an hour. I also want to continue to fight for paid leave of absence. As a human resources professional at one of the mental health organizations here in Dane County, I see what concerns our employees, right? So I want to make sure that when an employee is out for a reason for themselves or for a loved one, that pay is not a problem for them. So I will continue to fight for paid leave of absence. I would also continue to fight to legalize marijuana. I mean, you're able to smoke cigarettes, you're able to drink alcohol. Why not legalize marijuana? These are personal choices. Matter of fact, the states can even make money from legalizing marijuana. And I also want to say I will continue to fight for affordable housing, affordable childcare, women's rights. And I would also want to say that with my experience, I have worked with unions, so I know how to work across the aisle. So I want to make sure that Robin Voss or the Republican will not be a problem for us as Democrats. And then lastly, I remember during my nomination signature, one of the candidates in the Zoom signed my nomination signature. Supervisor Rose did. And so that should tell you a lot about me and my candidacy. Thank you so much. Vote Goodwill August 13th. Have a good night.
And Mr. Connors, you have the last word. I believe you're muted for the time being, though.
There we go. There we go. All right. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Chris. Somebody had to make that mistake somewhere along the line tonight. I appreciate my colleagues participating in this. Thank you. And thank you to the audience. Anybody who's still watching at this point, thank you for staying to the end. All five of us candidates are committed to helping Democrats win control of the state assembly this November and helping Democrats win control of the state Senate in 2026. All five of us are committed to protecting access to safe and legal abortions. This is an especially important issue to me because I'm the father of 3 young adult daughters. When someone attempts to take away my daughter's basic human rights, I take it personally. So how are you going to decide which of us are to vote for in the primary? I hope you agree that increasing state funding for public schools, tech colleges, and universities after decades of grossly inadequate state funding is a critical issue. I mentioned our 3 daughters. Well, we also have a son. 2 of our daughters and our son were born in India, and we adopted them when they were preschoolers. All 4 of our children graduated from Sun Prairie High School and then attended public universities. Their experience gives me a strong connection to the importance of providing our young people with high quality education. I hope you agree that the skyrocketing cost of housing is another critical issue. I advocate every day on the complex housing issue and previously served on Sun Prairie's Plan Commission. None of the other candidates have the depth of knowledge I have regarding how to make housing more affordable and increase the supply of housing. I have a proven track record of delivering results for the people I have represented in public office. I am Bill Connors, and I will fight for your freedom in the state assembly. I would be honored to have your vote in the August 13 primary. Thank you.
Well, we'd like to thank all 5 of our candidates who are the candidates in the Democratic primary for the 48th District. Bill Connors, Andrew Hysell, Goodwill Obieze, Avery Renk, and Rick Rose. And we'd like to thank you all for watching. Be sure to go vote on August 13th and read all about it at captimes.com. Thanks, and have a
Thank
great
you.
night, y'all.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Andrew.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.